It's a Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. We will dip our toe into the proverbial waters, talking Jimmy Butler hypothetically to Memphis in a trade. To Michael Cole, my co-host, not with us, returning from a trip to California to watch the Memphis Grizzlies lose 2 basketball games in Sacramento and in Golden State and San Francisco. And then Memphis back home tonight to take on the Mavericks. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax, flying solo today. No DeMichael Cole, traveling, getting back into Memphis, covering tonight's contest against the Mavericks. Goodness gracious, he's a busy guy. He was out there covering in Sacramento, in San Francisco this past weekend. He'll be back with us tomorrow on Locked On Grizzlies. You're flying solo once more with me, Joe Mullinax. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Become an everydayer. If you aren't already one, be with myself and DeMichael, both of us, one of us, whatever the case might be with us each and every time an episode drops. And remember, we have a free daily newsletter now. Go to lockedondaily.com. That is lockedondaily.com. Go subscribe to our free daily NBA newsletter. You get NBA content, you get fantasy basketball content, but perhaps most importantly, you get Memphis Grizzlies written words from me each and every day, each and every time a newsletter comes out. Again, it's free, it's daily, it's the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Go to lockedondaily.com to find how to subscribe. Guess what the topic of today's newsletter is, dear listener, dear viewer, everydayer. It is Jimmy Butler potentially coming to the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, I do want to stress, as of this recording, things have cooled considerably on the Jimmy Butler front, at least in terms of betting odds, right? Bovada Official, I'm using their betting odds here, at Bovada Official on X. They currently have the Memphis Grizzlies as the 7th favorite team, plus 1,000 to come to get Jimmy Butler, the Grizzlies to get Butler. But at one point, that number was a lot lower. He was a co-favorite alongside the Golden State Warriors at plus 350 to come to the Memphis Grizzlies. And that got a lot of people talking on social media. It got me talking. Again, if you follow me on X at Joe Mullinax, that's no surprise to you, right? Doesn't take much for me to get the juices flowing when it comes to the Memphis Grizzlies. And a Jimmy Butler hypothetical is a significant way to get those juices flowing because it leads to a larger conversation, right? And I want to stress before I get into this, and I wish DeMichael was here, and I'll probably get his take on it the next time we're together, because I don't think this is a topic that's going to go away until Butler is eventually traded. I don't think this is going to happen. I stress the word hypothetical because there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle that have to play out. There almost certainly has to be a third team involved. Because in order for the Grizzlies to make the salaries work and match, the Miami Heat would have to take on at least 3, probably 4 players in the exchange. They're not going to do that, right? So there has to be somebody else helping facilitate the deal. And anytime there has to be a third team, things get a little bit more fishy. The team that's the most likely team to potentially be that third to facilitate would be the Brooklyn Nets. And we know how the Memphis Grizzlies feel about Brooklyn at the moment, right? And how Brooklyn feels about Memphis. Lots of reports saying that they are on each other's bad sides. Mark Stein of the Stein line, Jake Fisher, those are guys that have been saying that. That's what happens when you get burned publicly when it comes to a trade negotiation. I don't think Jimmy Butler is coming to Memphis, but if he were to come to Memphis for the package that has been reported, the players going out, something like Marcus Smart, John Conchar, Luke Kennard, Brandon Clark. Some combination of those guys, maybe even all 4 in a first-round pick for Jimmy Butler to come to the Memphis Grizzlies. Again, don't think it's going to happen, but I do not hate it as much as I thought I would. The number one argument against bringing Jimmy Butler to Memphis at this stage, at least to me, is the mental component. The idea of him giving up on the Miami Heat, him not being a very good teammate, right? Being moved on from in multiple organizations now. At what point are you not a symptom, but you are the disease? Is Jimmy Butler a cancer? That's been said numerous times on social media. And maybe that's true. Maybe he is. But I will ask you this, and I want you to be honest with me. Hit me up on X, write it in the comments. They are in the Memphis Grizzlies, being they. The Memphis Grizzlies are in year 6 of this era. Taylor Jenkins, Zach Kleiman, Ja Morant. These guys are in their 6th year together. It is 2025. If the acquisition of a player for a gaggle of random players, with the exception of one, and I will make clear who is my sticking point in terms of who the Grizzlies are sending out here in a moment. You are struggling, or I am struggling with seeing as that being a bad thing. In terms of the salary cap, Jimmy Butler could opt out this summer and leave. And is that the worst thing for Memphis? No. It actually would free up money for them because Marcus Smart, John Conchar, and Clark, those are all guys that would be under contract next year. So it'd make cap space easier to re-sign Jaren Jackson Jr. Not the worst thing in the world. If he opts in and sticks around another year, it gets a little more complicated. Maybe you can't re-sign Santi Aldama. But you have an 18-month window now with a core of Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and Jimmy Butler. That's a pretty not-so-bad problem. And if Butler re-signs with Memphis, 2 years, $60 million, $70 million type of deal, that lessens the tax burden if he opts out and wants to re-sign. And maybe you can keep Jimmy Butler in that scenario and Jaren Jackson Jr. You say you want to be a taxpayer? Numerous repeat tax offenses lead to grander punishments. It's harder to build a roster. That is probably what the biggest concern is, even beyond the money. But in terms of him as a basketball player, Jimmy Butler would be one heck of a fit with the Memphis Grizzlies. You know what Jimmy Butler is really elite at offensively? Drawing fouls, creating shots for himself, getting to the free throw line, finishing at the rim. Does those sound like things that Memphis could use help with, especially in the half court? You betcha. You know what Jimmy Butler is still really good at when he's committed energy-wise, and that's a fair when question. Defensively, you know what Jimmy Butler does? He defends without fouling. He is elite defending without fouling. And all of these numbers I'm about to share with you are from Cleaning the Glass, my favorite website. His foul percentage is 1.2. That is the 99th percentile for Cleaning the Glass. He is a 1.7% in terms of his steal rate. That's 74th percentile. This is a guy who offensively is averaging 131.2 points per shot, 100 shot attempts. That is 93rd percentile among NBA forwards. He's 35 years old, but the guy can still get it done offensively. Biggest concern in terms of his offensive production? Hates shooting the three-pointer, apparently. Only 11% of his shot attempts are threes. That is among the worst with NBA forwards for Cleaning the Glass. The sad part is he's shooting them at a pretty decent clip, 39%. He was 41% from three last year. Maybe the Grizzlies can convince him to take more of those. But I want to do away with this idea of him being a bad basketball fit because that's nonsense. To me, it's nonsense. This guy, aside from the three-point shooting, would be perfect. And if you want to talk about how that makes it a little more difficult for Ja, I hear you. Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jimmy Butler, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey is a championship starting five. My holdup is moving on from Brandon Clark. Marcus Smart, we haven't seen enough, but maybe we've seen enough. And it's certainly not enough to say no to Jimmy Butler. If you could get it done with Luke Kennard, John Conchar, Marcus Smart, and you could keep Brandon Clark, you're winning the NBA Finals. Or at the very least, you are getting to the Western Conference Finals. Oklahoma City is a monster. They look very impressive. But we're just starting a conversation here. Again, until Butler is traded, the genie's out of the bottle. Whether it's a rumor, realistic, whatever the case might be, this is going to be a conversation point. If you move on from Brandon Clark, that hurts you in terms of your front court depth. If you can somehow keep Clark in these conversations and you have Clark alongside these guys, you're the third best team in the NBA. It's the Thunder and the Celtics, and it's you. No offense to the Cleveland Cavaliers. That is worth it. That is worth it to me. I have talked myself into it. Is it going to happen? Probably not. So if you're mad at me about wanting Jimmy Butler, I'm not actively pursuing it, and I'm certainly not moving on from Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane to get there. That's a non-starter for me. But if I can take this random hodgepodge of contracts that aren't Brandon Clark, like if they could somehow find a way to get Aldama or LaRavia in there, two guys that if Butler's in the mix, they're not sticking around anyway, and you get a third team and you can do those cap mechanisms to get Butler here without moving on from Brandon Clark, I'm in 100%. And I would give up an extra first-round pick to make it happen. That's how much I believe in Brandon Clark as a part of a championship core with these guys. But that's really difficult to get done. And with all these moving pieces, it's going to be really hard to see that come to fruition. What do you think? How do you feel about the rumor? I want to stress, hypothetical, almost certainly not going to happen. But it was a pretty high betting point over the weekend. Jimmy Butler to Memphis, how would you feel about it? Hit me up on X or hit me up in the comments. When we come back, it was a bad trip out west for the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll talk about what went down in San Francisco and in Sacramento next. Stick with us here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get real money action while watching your favorite NBA stars than with Prize Picks. Whether you're a diehard fan or just love some friendly competition, Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. Here's how it works. Pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Do you think Desmond Bane is going to drop 30 points? Or maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. is getting more than 8 rebounds? Prize Picks lets you make those predictions and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. I love Prize Picks. I've had a blast with it in the past, especially Prize Picks Flex Play option. Even if one of my picks doesn't hit, I can still double my money. It is sometimes as easy to get this money turned around as quick as 15 minutes. It's the best way to keep the game exciting. Now's the perfect time to join. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. No need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. I got to tell you, I am very much interested in how this weekend went. I want to talk to Michael Cole about it because I'm very curious as to the losses were pretty bad losses, right? Sacramento 9-12 at home when they beat the Grizzlies on Friday night. It's not like they were some juggernaut there. We had mentioned on Friday's episode that the Kings were a little bit more scrappy coming out of the coaching change. And that's exactly what transpired. The biggest issue for Memphis on Friday night against Sacramento was a slow start, especially defensively. The Kings scored 46 points in the first quarter against the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis scored 32. The offense was not that big of an issue. In fact, Memphis shot 48% from the field, 46% from three. They made 30 free throws. The issue was, as it has been throughout the season to this point for the Memphis Grizzlies, turnovers. 17 turnovers for the Memphis Grizzlies in this contest against the Sacramento Kings. And the Kings were able to connect on 19 points off of those turnovers. Certainly not as bad as it was against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But as I have been beating the drum of just about every time turnovers are brought up on Locked On Grizzlies, you're losing possessions. And yes, you're pushing the pace. And yes, that is naturally going to lead to possessions being lost. You're trying to create as many possessions as possible, quicker decision-making. I get it. But that is not helping you get back on defense in terms of transition opportunities. It is hurting you in terms of structuring your alignments and where you fit as a set defense. Your schemes are harder to implement. You're pushing the pace so much on offense that you're not able to get back consistently on defense. It's leading to other chances for points in advantageous situations for the opponent. And that's exactly what happened with the Kings. I mean, Trey Lyles was 6 for 6 from the field on the bench. The reserves struggled for Memphis and thrived for the Kings. And then you had a really impressive showing from the likes of De'Aaron Fox, the much maligned De'Aaron Fox, coming out of the firing of the Kings head coach. 23 points, not the most efficient shooting night, 23 shots, but Fox was an aggressor defensively. Malik Monk cooked Memphis, 6 for 12 from beyond the arc. DeMar DeRozan, we just mentioned, how he and Jimmy Butler, not known for their three-point acumen. DeRozan cooked Memphis from beyond the arc. The Grizzlies made 17 threes. The Kings made 21 threes. And that was essentially the difference. Memphis was not able to keep up with that production. The Kings made more shots. They had more possessions. Even with Memphis and all this talk of pace, the Grizzlies were able to keep it close because the free throw differential, Memphis made 30 free throws. The Kings only made 19. But there were just so many more shot opportunities for Sacramento. The Grizzlies weren't able to protect possessions. Too many turnovers from Scottie Pippen Jr., Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. Those three players by themselves had 13 turnovers. That's not a winning formula. And then the next night in San Francisco, the Grizzlies lose by 8 to Golden State. Not so much a poor start in this one as it was consistently not being able to outrun and outrace the Golden State Warriors. They just outperformed Memphis in this game. Jalen Wells at his hometown game against the Sacramento Kings, he was the best player on the floor for Memphis and arguably among everybody on the floor that night. Struggles against Golden State, 4 of 13. Desmond Bane plays 35 minutes, 9 of 20 from the field. Not the most efficient shooting night, but he has 10 assists. What else does Desmond Bane have? 8 turnovers. 8 turnovers. The turnovers once again rear their ugly head. 22 turnovers for the Grizzlies. Now the Warriors had 18. But off of those 22 turnovers that the Memphis Grizzlies had, they gave up 28 points to the Golden State Warriors. And that is much more like what we saw against the Oklahoma City Thunder, when the Thunder were able to take those turnovers and turn them into scoring opportunities for themselves. So it's a twofer. Not only are you missing out on a chance to score points, they are taking those points from you. That was the swing in this contest. That is what really hurt the Grizzlies. Jake LaRavia had an impressive game. That aforementioned Brandon Clark, the guy that I really struggle seeing not being a part of this Grizzlies team moving forward. That guy had a strong showing against Golden State. And with so many guys out due to injury, which we'll reiterate here in a moment when we talk about tonight's game against Dallas, with so many guys not actively playing, you can't lose those chances to score. But that's exactly what Memphis is doing. And I think that one of the reasons I'm not so against this Jimmy Butler idea is it allows for someone else, a veteran, right? Butler's 35 years old. He's been in the league for a long time. Desmond Bane is 26, right? Jaren's 25. Obviously, they're veteran players at this point, not trying to insinuate that they're inexperienced, but Jimmy Butler's played in an NBA Finals, right? He's been in multiple playoff wars, long playoff series. I trust that guy with the ball in his hands, and I trust for him to create a shot at the very least. If he's not going to make offense for somebody else, he's going to do it for himself. And then when he is off the ball, he's going to be able to make cuts and reads. He's a very physical player at the rim. That's exactly what Memphis needs in this kind of scheme, except for the lack of three-point shooting on his part. Desmond Bane would have to become more of a spaced-up, spot-up shooter. And would that be the worst thing? I say that as a Desmond Bane fan. Des having 8 turnovers is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. Desmond Bane understands that. He knows that better than anybody. But you're not going to win many basketball games if you are not able to create for yourself in an efficient manner. And that's the main reason to me. Obviously, defense was a major problem too, but especially against the Kings, the free throw differential was in Memphis's favor for once, even with as much as the Grizzlies foul. They couldn't take advantage of it because of the turnovers. The turnovers continue to be a problem. They continue to be an issue. And if Memphis hopes to stop this mini losing streak tonight against the Dallas Mavericks, they have to address that problem. They have to. How can they do that? We'll talk about that next. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. Again, Memphis back at home in FedEx Forum, taking on the Dallas Mavericks, the Luka Doncic-less Dallas Mavericks. How can the Grizzlies pull out the win? We'll talk about it next, coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. You know that it's going to be a big day on Sunday for DeMichael and myself. The Packers play the Eagles at 4:30 on Sunday. Then Sunday Night Football is my Commanders against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to be locked in on the action just like we are here on Locked On Grizzlies with our two NFL teams, DeMichael with the Packers and myself with the Commanders. You could do the exact same thing through FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. We close out today's episode talking about tonight's contest, and it was another very sad injury report for the Memphis Grizzlies. Yuki Kawamura is almost certainly back per Grizzlies PR on X. That's positive news. Somebody that's not going to be playing is Desmond Bane, almost certainly. He's doubtful with a left ankle sprain. Doubtful means it's unlikely he takes the court. Santi Aldama, still out. Luke Kennard, out due to hamstring soreness. And then the usual suspects, Gigi Jackson, John Morant, Marcus Smart, Vince Williams Jr., all out. So if you're keeping count at home, that is 6, if not 7, projected preseason rotation pieces that are not playing for the Memphis Grizzlies in this game tonight against Dallas. Obviously, Dallas is not the picture of health either. Luka Doncic, out for the foreseeable future, right? Out for roughly a month with that calf strain. That is an issue for Dallas. Another major positive, though, for the Memphis Grizzlies is that Kyrie Irving is not playing either for the Dallas Mavericks. So not only will Luka not be on the floor for the Mavs, but neither will Kyrie Irving. So the two best players for the Dallas Mavericks are out. John Morant, Desmond Bane, likely out. Maybe it's a fair fight. But that leads me to saying that the most important cog to this is going to be one Jaren Jackson Jr. And we kind of sound like a broken record at this point, right? We talk about how Jaren is unguardable, how Jaren should dominate these matchups. And I think that we're at that place again with the Mavs. Now, the Mavs have a little bit more unique front court than other NBA teams, right? PJ Washington, Derek Lively. These are guys that can compete and get after it a little bit. Clyber, Daniel Gafford. They have some bigs that have a little bit more wiggle to them, a little bit more movement. But especially with Luka and Kyrie out, a player like PJ Washington, when the Mavs played against Cleveland recently, Washington shot the ball 18 times. He was the leading offensive focal point for the Mavericks with both Luka and Kyrie out. How is that going to connect to being able to defend Jaren Jackson Jr.? Jaren is used to, at this point, being an offensive focal point and a defensive stalwart. PJ Washington is not. Klay Thompson having to take 13 shots in the year of our Lord 2025 is probably not ideal for any basketball team trying to win. But that's exactly what happened. Klay Thompson, 4 of 13 from the field, but he was 4 for 10 from beyond the arc. Klay can still hit those threes at about a 40% clip. The Mavs are going to chuck threes. The key is going to be whether or not they go in. Against Cleveland, they shot 44 three-pointers. And again, the Cleveland game, Dallas loses by 12 without Luka, without Kyrie. Dallas was 12 for 44 from beyond the arc. That's 27.3%. That is abysmal. It's also well below their season average. You can't expect Dallas to shoot that poorly. And oh, by the way, if you want to go back to what the Grizzlies have been up to lately, it's not like Memphis has been the beacon of perimeter defense in recent games. Sacramento Kings game. May I remind you, Sacramento makes 21 threes, 21 of 47. That's almost 45% conversion rate. It's really hard to win a basketball game when your opponent is shooting that many threes and making that many of those attempts. Then go to the Golden State game, right? 121 to 113. Memphis loses that contest. The Golden State Warriors, 23 of 43. 53.5% on their three-point attempts. Jonathan Kuminga, 3 for 3 from beyond the arc. Lindy Waters, 4 for 5 from beyond the arc. Moses Moody, 2 of 3. Buddy Hield, 4 of 7. Dennis Schroeder, 3 of 6. Draymond Green, 3 of 6. So as much as I harp on turnovers, and those do matter a lot, I don't regret that point at all, because you can control that. The perimeter defense was so bad on the California road trip that the Grizzlies have to find a way to right that wrong too. Otherwise, this Dallas team is going to find open shots, and they're going to make open shots, even without Luka and Kyrie. They have the personnel to be able to do that. Now, because Luka and Kyrie are out, Memphis currently roughly a 4-point favorite in this game. Memphis should be favored by more if they're playing the way that they're capable of, even with the guys that are currently out. Go back to that Phoenix game, the last game of 2024. Jaren was unguardable. That was impressive. But Desmond Bane was really strong too. And if Bane is not going to be an active participant in this contest, which it doesn't look like he will be, if you're not going to have Desmond Bane, somebody else has to step up. Somebody else has to step up. Can Wells be that guy? Can he find a way to be that contributor, to be that producer of offense like he was in Sacramento? Can Zach Edey step up? This is an interesting opportunity for Edey. There's not really anybody on the Mavs that has the size and physicality that Edey provides. Now, again, they have front court players like Lively, who's a phenomenal athlete. They'll have guys that create mismatch problems on the opposite end. But Edey could have a strong offensive showing in this game if given the opportunity. Edey is a fun player to watch play when given the chance. But they need Jalen Wells to step up. To be honest with you, they need more from Scottie Pippen Jr. The turnovers were an issue against the Kings. Against the Golden State Warriors, he wasn't there enough offensively. He only had 1 assist, only 12 points. He was 3 for 4 from beyond the arc, but he didn't do much else beyond that. He was 1 of 5 on his 2-point attempts. The Grizzlies need more. They just simply need more. So looking at this undermanned Grizzlies team, because that's exactly what they are, right? You're looking at guys that are likely not going to be in the mix. Should have John Conchar back. That will help. I can't believe I said that out loud. If you're an everydayer of Locked On Grizzlies, you probably just fell out of your chair. Hopefully you're not driving. You might have just swerved off the road. Having John Conchar back in the mix should be a positive for Memphis, right? Being without Luke Kennard hurts. But if you're starting Pippen Jr. and Wells and Conchar and Jackson Jr. and Edey, you have a chance against this Warriors team in their current state. If Kyrie was playing, not so much. If Luka was playing, I'm getting nervous. But Dallas is without their 2 best guys. You are at home. The Memphis Grizzlies are a much better home team this year than they are a road team. 14-4 in the friendly confines of FedEx Forum. This should be a win for Memphis. The reason that it's close in terms of a line is because of the injuries that Memphis is dealing with. But the Grizzlies are deeper. The Grizzlies have more capacity to lean on the guys that they do have. And again, you are looking at a guy in Jaren Jackson Jr., who the last time these two teams played in early December, John Morant was on the court, and that obviously makes a major difference. But Dallas won by 5 in Dallas. Jaren was 5 of 14 in that game. 5 of 14, 16 points. How often has that happened with Jaren this season where he's just been a non-factor offensively? Maybe too many times. But more often than not, Jaren is not putting up that shot line. And I think in this iteration of Dallas Grizzlies, the Memphis team should come out with a win at home in FedEx Forum. Let me know what you're thinking on X. Hit me up in the comments. How are you feeling about Grizzlies-Mavericks tonight? Obviously, on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Grizzlies, we will break down this game so much more. Probably have some more on Jimmy Butler to talk about, whether or not Marcus Smart or Brandon Clark would be a sticking point in a trade. I think it's Clark more than Smart. Maybe you disagree. We can certainly talk all about that on our Tuesday edition of the podcast. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make sure that you are becoming an everydayer if you're not already one. Be with myself and DeMichael each and every time an episode drops. And subscribe to the Locked On Grizzlies free daily newsletter, LockedOnDaily.com. Click on the link there for Locked On Grizzlies and get Grizzlies words from me each and every day in your inbox, plus fantasy basketball updates, plus national NBA storylines. LockedOnDaily.com, a free daily newsletter from Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for being with me on this Monday. Hopefully you're staying warm wherever you are. I am Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in as well. We'll catch you back here tomorrow to talk Grizzlies-Mavs, whatever nonsense comes from the Jimmy Butler conversation. Lots to discuss here on Locked On Grizzlies. See ya.